Hi everybody, this is April from the Yoga Ranger Studio, and I asked you on the community page as well as on Instagram and Facebook to send me your questions about anything you'd be curious about knowing about, either me or the practice or seasonal change or any questions you might have. And I got a really nice long list. So I'm going to answer all those questions today. I will try to do it as efficiently as possible because I know it's kind of hard to sit and listen to somebody talk for a long time, but this could be like your on the road, listen to it audio file too. So, okay, I'm going to start with one that probably is the most pertinent to most people. What are your tips to transition from one season to another? What do you do? Lifestyle, food, and rituals. This is actually really important to me because I find that between summer and fall, I have a really hard time transitioning. And so winter and spring is the same, but it's a little bit harder for me for the summer, fall. And what I try to do is I try to eat foods that are in the next season. So for instance, in fall, I would start eating more of the fall foods like pumpkin and sweet potatoes and heavier foods that are a little bit more cooked and warming and heating. I'd be adding spices that are a little bit more heating and warming, more kind of comforting type foods. I tend to change my practice a little bit. I will sort of settle into either a more energetic practice where I'll do more vinyasa flow for a few days, and then I'll do a little bit more restorative or yin depending on the weather and how my body feels. But I think it's important to use your practice to kind of help you transition from one season to the next and really listen to your body. So really listening to what your body feels like it needs. So if you're really, really hot, you don't want to practice a vinyasa flow where you're going to get even more heated. You're going to find yourself even hotter. You'd probably want to practice a practice that's more cooling, more soothing, more calming. Same thing happens when you get colder. If you're in a cold climate and you're really cold, you might want to practice some more vinyasa flow that sort of heats you up and warms you so that you have that balance of temperatures. Always looking for that balance. Rituals I do. I tend to sort of shift a little bit more introverted, this natural downturn of energy. So fire element and summer being the peak of our energy. As we start to turn down, we start to kind of go down at this point where the energy gets lower and lower until we hit that water element winter time. So our energy is now beginning to decline. And so I find myself turning to more creative, more journaling, more reading, more restful and kind of turning inward type practices. Rituals would be more attention to the lunar cycles and connecting my body to those more. Spending a little bit more time outside and really connecting to nature as a whole as that transitions and enjoying that the shift of either in spring, all the things coming up new, and in fall, all the things, losing the leaves and the changing of the colors and everybody, the squirrels gathering nuts. To me, there's like really paying attention to that helps me shift as well and really connect to that organic shift that the body already wants to do. I think to help that, during these two seasonal shifts, it's really healthy to do sort of a little mini detox. Drinking some dandelion tea, eating some foods that are lighter and easier on the body, easier to process, so less proteins, no processed foods, cutting down on stimulants, and really helping the body naturally transition as it was meant to do, sort of following that line of thinking. I tend to eat very seasonal, so for me this is very easy. During the summer I'm going to eat a lot of really fresh, bright, more raw foods. During the fall I'm going to start looking at more cooked foods. And so that's going to just be a seasonal eater. Being a seasonal eater can really help support your body as a whole. So that's kind of what I do, a little bit of a change. Some tips for sharing about eating more mindfully. I wish I could say I'm a really mindful eater, but I admit I'm not. There are days where I eat in front of the computer, I eat on the go, I eat standing up, and I know when I'm doing it, and I try to stop it. But sometimes you'll find yourself that's where it happens. I think for me, about once a month, sitting down and doing a mindfulness meditation practice that is one I've seen used over and over again of just picking like an orange and really experiencing the orange, the texture, the smell, peeling the orange, enjoying the scent, the sound of opening that orange, and then savoring each single bite really makes you a mindful eater. But if you wanted to do that with anything, your cup of coffee in the morning, your first bite of breakfast, your whatever it is that you're eating first thing in the day to set that mindfulness, sit down and look at your food. Smell your food. Set down the fork between every single bite and savor. Take a small bite and just let it move around your tongue. Your tongue has different sensory experiences, different flavors throughout the tongue, and letting it move around and really touch each one of those parts of your palate. Slowly swallowing and really enjoying each flavor and just noticing all the different spices and textures and smells involved in your food. Just doing that once a week or for a whole day out of each month is really helpful in helping you build a more mindful eating habit. It also helps your digestion work a lot better. When you smell your food, your digestion immediately starts to kick in because it knows something's coming. So looking at your food and smelling your food and experiencing it before you taste it can have a profound effect on eating more mindfully and really thinking about what you're putting in your mouth. We often overeat when we're eating on the go, and I find that's definitely the case for me. If I'm watching TV or have my computer or something near me, I eat more than I really want to, and I don't notice when I'm full. So stepping away from any electronics, I've tried to make sure that I don't bring any electronic to the table when I eat now so that I'm not distracted by something, but that's always a work in progress. So just something to keep in mind. How often should you practice yin per week for flexibility? This depends so much on your natural life. If you are someone who sits a lot during the day, and that's pretty much your entire day is sitting and very little movement, you're going to want to do more yin. So maybe a morning and an evening practice a couple of times a week. I generally practice yin about the same number of times I practice vinyasa flow. So 3 times a week of vinyasa flow, 1 restorative practice a week, and meditation every day is my standard practice. So for flexibility overall, have patience with yourself. And if you're looking for flexibility, practice your yin in the morning. When you're cold, when you've just stumbled out of bed, that's the most effective way of really getting into the connective tissue really deeply. And I find that the rest of the day I'm far more flexible, and it's built flexibility. So my practice for yin is, I'd say about 95% of it is in the morning and not at night. So definitely great for relaxation at night and winding down. But if you're looking for flexibility, specifically mobility, I would be practicing in the morning as well, or the morning alone. Is Ayurveda something that you consider and follow well? I do actually. I have been playing with Ayurveda for, I'd say, about 12 years, 10 years. I've really incorporated it into my lifestyle, so it's almost hard to kind of separate it out as to what it is in my life that I do, but I eat according to my dosha specific. I notice when my doshas are out of balance a little bit. So if you're not familiar with Ayurveda, there are 3 main doshas. You can be tridoshic, single doshic, or double doshic. I am a Vata Pitta. So I tend to be a little fast thinking, fast moving. I get a little overstimulated. I'm very creative. But this also means that my digestion is off a lot. So I have to focus on slowing down my eating foods that are warmed and cooked and good for me in my dosha, not eating raw foods. That's really not something that works well for a Vata, especially myself. So I do consider it and follow it as well. I also consider it movement practice. So if I'm feeling really scattered, doing a vinyasa flow that's really fast movement will make me more scattered. So I would tend to do something that's more of a restorative practice to help settle myself and use a lot of blankets to kind of hold me down and give me a little bit more grounding. How I spend my day, any morning and evening rituals or things you do or recommend doing on a daily basis. I have a really pretty static morning ritual system that I've set in place, and it actually relates to the Ayurveda. I have an Ayurvedic ritual that I do every single morning. As soon as I wake up, first thing I do is I say kind of a gratitude for this day, for this chance to do things, for this opportunities that this day offers for myself. So a great feeling of gratitude and really focusing on gratitude for a brand new day to start over again. And then I kind of think about all the people that I know that might need some thoughts, some caring, some attention, some energy. And that could be specific people or groups. So if I've had someone comment or say something, or it could be anybody. It could be anybody in the member group, YouTube group, online, anybody I know that needs some energy or attention. I try to say a little thought for them and say, I wish you well today, and send a little loving kindness their way. So that takes a little while in the morning. Then I get up and I do tongue scraping, which is definitely Ayurvedic. If you are not familiar with tongue scraping, it's cleaning off your tongue first thing in the morning and washing out your mouth. Then rinsing your eyes out with cool water and spraying a little rose water on there so that your eyes are open and fresh. Then I drink warm lemon water with half a lemon squeezed into it. My new ritual has added into that is I do hula hooping, which is really fun, but it's a very rhythmic, ritualistic movement that makes me feel really stable and comfortable. And it's really good for the waist as well as movement and kind of getting you warmed up for the day. So I am building up. So I have 600 repetitions of the hula hoop now, which only takes about 6 minutes, 7 minutes. So I'm building up to see, how long I can stay on the hula hoop. But then I do a little bit of yin. I sometimes do some vinyasa flow right after that. And then I meditate, do my pranayama practice, which is breath regulation, then my meditation practice, and then down for breakfast. My nighttime ritual is actually pretty short. I try to get my bed all fixed up about 30 minutes before I go to bed. And then I use a little bit of essential oil either on my chest or my hands for calming, like lavender or something like that. I have an eye pillow with lavender in it. I lay down, I turn on a 30 to 45 minute meditation practice or yoga nidra, cover my eyes and lay on my back and just listen to that. That's sort of my nighttime ritual program. Throughout my day, I do a lot of work in between all those two things. I homeschool both my kids, so they are here at home, so I work with them as well. And I'll kind of go with some of the other things I do a little bit later. What do you do to keep your core muscles engaged through your day? I'm going to say you don't really want to do that. You don't want to engage them all the time. Just like every muscle, when you engage them all the time, they get stuck and you really don't train them. What you're looking for is a supple area of your core. You want it to be soft, but engaged and healthy. So think of like someone who does belly dancing. Their bellies are really soft, but the movement they can get out and the control they have over their core is amazing. So I always think of a belly dancer as a perfect example of a really good core. It's open and mobile, but it's strong and stable. So think about engaging your core on and off throughout the day. I wouldn't think about like holding it in all the time. When you hold that in, you're kind of holding tension in too. So sometimes during the day, just let your belly soften. Think about where it is. And sometimes you'll find that you're really holding a lot of gripping and tension there. And just breathe into the belly, let it get soft and relax and rest. You'll notice in a lot of my core classes, I tend to mix it up. I give you some core work and then we rest and allow the belly to fill up with air and soften. And then we work it and we rest and we work and we rest. It's really the best way to build a good, healthy, strong core. So don't think about holding it all the time. Think about finding a balance between holding and relaxing and holding and relaxing. I find most people hold it way too much, and that's actually causing a lot of tension in their bodies as well, and kind of compressing your breath too. If your belly's really gripped, if your core is really gripped, you're not breathing into that belly quite as fully. So let it soften every now and then. Suggestions for reconnecting to your practice and inspiring it. We all go through stages in our lives where our practice falls off to the side or it's not quite as inspiring and stimulating. My suggestion here is to change your practice. Think of it in a totally different way. Maybe start adding something to it. For me, hula hooping was it was sort of fun to get me on the mat. And once I'm upstairs on the mat in that yoga room, I'm going to practice yoga because I'm already there. So get yourself to the mat. Get yourself to the mat to do anything. If it's just to lay there in Shavasana, that's okay. Today you may just need that. Just think of any amount of time and you'll find that once you get on the mat, leave your mat out. Once you get on the mat, you'll always return to it and you'll continue to do more and more poses because you'll be like, oh, I can just do this pose and maybe I'll just do this pose, or I could do this pose too. And I always find that when I don't want to practice, if I get on the mat and do 1 or 2 poses, I'm probably going to be on there for the next 30 to 60 minutes because I just keep thinking of more things I'd like to do and adding them in. Change it up. Change from vinyasa flow to yin for a week, or change from yin to restorative for a week. or switch it up the days that you do it. Maybe add more restorative, add more yin, add more vinyasa flow. Make some changes to your practice and really find a little new inspiration. Start with small amounts of time and work your way up from there. And don't beat yourself up. Don't feel guilty. Don't yell at yourself. That's not what yoga is about. Any amount of yoga, just like any amount of a meditation, is going to help you feel better and be a better person. So know that any amount is better than nothing. So just step on there, just kind of feel it out, and don't beat yourself up about it at all. Don't feel guilty about yoga. Do what you can do what you feel like you can do. Give it your best shot. Have you heard about trauma yoga? I have, and I think this is a really wonderful field. I think yoga lends itself to a practice that can be very healing, offers a space that is non-judgmental, open, and allows people to feel comfortable and safe. I think that's really important. So it's a wonderful field of yoga. It's not one I'm specifically certified in. I tend to think about that maybe later on, but not right now. I think it's more of one of those practices that I think is better in person or with private yoga. So I'm looking for that later on. The room and part of the studio, you're actually looking at the other part of the studio. This is a 15 by 15 room downstairs. This is actually my house. It's a home studio. So this is the downstairs that fits up to 8 people. I also have an outdoor patio that's partially covered, and that fits up to 9. The upstairs studio that you see me in most often is actually my personal studio. It's the one I do private practices or private sessions with one-on-one or 2-to-1. And that was actually started out as my personal practice space. So it is filled with things that are very meaningful to me. I didn't decorate it necessarily thinking of YouTube. In fact, it was decorated prior to my ever going on YouTube in different ways. I've added some things along there, and I think some people have noticed that. The things I've added have been gifts from people, from my family, from people I know, from clients that are very special to me, from situations or vacations or trips that I took where I found something or had an experience and I really wanted something to remind me of it. It's very much a very personal space for me. There is nothing in there that was purchased just for decoration purposes only. All of those things were very, very personally chosen by me. As far as colors and decor inspiration, I absolutely love the color red, and I have it throughout my house. I love it in different spaces. I think it's a really beautiful, inspiring, warming, lifestyle kind of color for me. And so you'll see a lot of red in there. I love elephants. There's a lot of elephants in there. Elephants are very inspiring to me. They're kind of my animal of choice. I don't think it was inspired by anything in particular other than my love of really dark, rich woods, metal, and bright colors. That's just something I've always loved. So it has the look of the things that I really love. So it's a space that is one I love to be in and I love to practice in. So I'm glad that other people are seeing it that way as well. How did you become interested in Chinese Eastern medicine? Did you travel there? I have not traveled there, but my interest in it sort of flowed from just a natural yogic perspective. Yoga, then Ayurveda, the sister science of food and eating and health. To that, I found really dovetailed well with acupuncture, acupressure, Eastern medicine, and I found myself just naturally moving that direction because it was just something that appealed to me. I love that it treats people as a whole lifestyle, as a whole being, very holistically and fully. I think that's really important. I think the idea of treating people like a gardener, offering lots of options like, how are you eating? How are you living? What's your stress level? What's your environment like? We are a product of our environment to some extent, and those things will affect the balance of our minds and bodies. Mind and body is naturally intertwined, and I've always believed that. So I think I found myself just rotating there because it was just a natural progression of my desire to look at the world that way and to look at health that way. So it just kind of flowed that direction. How come I look so young, and is it yoga related? Yes and no. I hope it is. I actually naturally have some great genes. My mom looks very young and she's 75, so she looks very young. So I think genetics play a certain point in that. Care, taking really good care and using a lot of natural organic stuff in my life. Yoga for me was not just the poses, but more of you can hear my cats in the background. They're fighting over a box that they have found. I think yoga as a lifestyle helps you choose better eating, better everything that you put in your body, everything that you use in your life. And I think that does have a profound effect on how you look. This is the outside. So if the inside is healthier, then the outside will reflect that. I believe that. I truly believe that the two will reflect each other. And so taking care of yourself physically and mentally and emotionally can really help you look better overall. So yes, I think it is yoga related, but there's some genetics in there too. I'm going to admit that. How did I get started as a yoga teacher, and did I transition from another career? What was I doing before this? I have done a lot of different things. There's a post on the community page of all the different things I've done. I was an attorney. Then I became a stay-at-home mom and homeschooler, and yoga kind of arrived sort of in that mix. I was doing a little bit of yoga while I was in law school. It was a really great way to unwind and sort of help my body feel a little bit better and reduce the stress levels. So I would study and I'd do yoga, then I'd study and do yoga. And so it sort of helped support me as a whole. So I got started because I took a class and I fell in love with the teacher and the community and the students around me. And it just seemed like such a natural fit. I loved fitness and I was working out at a gym, and I do like working out at a gym, but I found that yoga was something I really, really loved doing, and I couldn't wait to get on my mat. Now, going to the gym, I had to convince myself to do it, but going to do yoga, I was just so excited and happy to do it and so thrilled to do it. So I really felt like I chose something that was intuitive for me. And ultimately, I thought to myself, I love this so much, I really want to teach it. So that's sort of how I ended up teaching yoga. Do I teach online only or in person too? I do both. Actually, I started as a local yoga teacher. Like I explained, this is my downstairs yoga studio that I teach private group sessions in now. I used to have a public studio, but I kind of decided to move it into a private group session type situation. So I do teach classes here every week, as well as online on the member community and also online through YouTube and now on Udemy. So if you haven't checked out those courses, I have a lunar cycle course with yin yoga, meditation and journaling, as well as a chakra balancing with yin yoga practices on Udemy. So you can go to theyogaranger.com and check out those as well. Is yoga my full-time job? Absolutely. I don't do anything else right now. I run the local studio. I do the member site. I do YouTube. I homeschool my kids, and I am involved in my community. So that keeps me pretty busy. That's kind of what I do during my day all day long, is all those things. How did I get my start on YouTube? I had a client who is still with me that I teach her. She suggested that she was traveling a lot, and I noticed that I had a lot of students at the time that were traveling a lot, and they wanted to do yoga with me while they were traveling. So they asked for a way to do that. So I started posting some videos on YouTube private, and then I just decided to turn them public, and that is how I got my start on YouTube. Dreams for the future related to yoga work. I have some huge dreams, I really do. I ultimately would love to do small 3 to 5 day retreats several times a year for 8 or fewer people, very close-knit community type things that would be like what I would call a life-changing retreat, where you really reconnect with yourself. It's not just yoga and meditation, but it's exploring the self, exploring your inner landscape, releasing things that no longer serve you, and helping really build a more fulfilling life, setting intentions and really goals, and helping you get started in those. I would really love to do more retreats, and that's definitely something that is in my mind and working on it. Way out there in the big dream world of this, I would love to own a yoga retreat center and have it sort of be a foster cat type sanctuary too, because I definitely want to blend yoga and animals together. I don't know how many people know this. I mean, you know, I have 6 cats and a dog, but I love animals and animal rescue, and I really want to be supportive. And my ultimate goal was, besides yoga as a field, was to do my best throughout my life to support animal rescue in any way and shape that I could. And so that is a huge thing to me and my family, and it's really important to me. So I would love to kind of dovetail those together at some point. So retreats, definitely. More courses online, but I think retreats are somewhere I really love to do. I'd like to meet people and sit down with you and spend quality time with a small group of people really connecting, because I think we're so separated by the lifestyles that we lead, and I really think we need that support community and that connection and that time together to feel supported in whatever we want to do with our lives. So that's one of my big dreams. Outside passions and hobbies. I am an avid cook and baker. I love to cook and bake. I love to experiment. I love to explore. I have recently become kind of obsessed with sourdough, so I'm working a lot with sourdough. But I love to cook and bake a lot for other people, for my family, for anybody who will eat it. I read a huge amount, probably 700 to 1,000 pages a week on average. No, that is not yoga related. That is outside of what I read for yoga, which is a lot of other stuff on top of that. But I love to read. I love to write. If you are part of my newsletter, you know that I really enjoy writing quite a lot. It's something I've sort of suppressed for a long time and not really had an outlet for. And I've sort of found my happy place building a newsletter that I can sort of express the things that are going on in my life and in my world in words. And I really, really love writing. I garden. I do love gardening. I love growing vegetables. I can't grow a flower to save my life. I have no idea why, but I can grow tons of vegetables and they do really well. So I like to stick with that. Besides that, I like a lot of art stuff. I love to draw. I love to color. I love to paint. Things like that. I like a lot of creative. I like to make jewelry. I make jewelry on the side sometimes too. I haven't been doing it quite as much because it's pretty time intensive to make jewelry, but I do love making jewelry. So that's another thing that's really kind of fun for me. I put this last one in here because it's a little bit longer. So depth and detail about how I plan a session. So I'm going to give you sort of, it's really detailed. So I'm going to give you sort of a shortened version of it, sort of an outline version of how I lay out a session. I have an idea. I'll read something, I'll hear something, it's music, it's someone saying something, it's an article, or just an idea will pop in my head. And I will kind of let that mull around a little bit, and I'll think of, is this a restorative, a yin, a meditation, a pranayama practice, or a flow? What would, or maybe more than one of those, does it fit into one of those best? How would I work this into one of those styles best? What would best serve it? And then I start to think about what poses would work to make that theme more effective, and what poses would lend themselves to those, what kind of flows, what kind of movements, what kind of what would lend themselves most to that, whatever my idea is. And then I sit down and I sort of start writing stuff out. I write a little bit of stuff out. I kind of brainstorm all the poses that I can think of that might lend to that. And I do some research. So I have a lot of books and a lot of articles that I have downloaded and put in notebooks. So I start looking through those for more information, and I start writing notes on those things and start adding that to my image. And then I sort of add on to that by going online. I'll search for articles or commentaries or things related to that topic in particular. Other than what I have in my present library here at home, I will look for outside sources on Google. If I need to, or if I want to, I have lots of friends that are yoga teachers, and I will throw out ideas to them and say, hey, what do you think of this? What are your thoughts on this? And I will get some feedback from them as well. That happens every now and then. And then I will start practicing it. I'll lay it out and I'll practice a portion of it and say, okay, this pose doesn't work here, this pose works here, and I'll start arranging the poses in an order that makes sense for where I'm going with the overall theme. And I will kind of work them according to how much structure I want, length of time, I'll put time off to the side as sort of an option with a question mark next to it. And then I'll start practicing it, the full thing, and I'll lay it out a couple of times and practice it several different ways and see where it goes, and ultimately ends up with a final something that I write out with some basic details that I want to relay at the beginning, maybe some things I want to say during the class, as well as the poses in question at the time. So that's sort of a high-end view of kind of how it works. There's a lot that goes in between there. Usually the night before I film it or teach it, I have a lot of things going on in my head, and I actually sort of mentally work out what I'm going to say as an introduction. I don't write any of that down, so it's not pre-written or pre-screened. I have just an outline of some general poses or a pose list. That's how I film. That's how I've always filmed. Sometimes I don't have many notes at all. It will all be in my head somewhere pulled together. So it just kind of comes together. I don't film multiple times. I do a one take type situation. I do not refilm unless a cat knocks down a light or breaks something, which rarely happens, but it has happened once. But it is a one take situation. So if my words come out garbled, that's just how life goes. And in a real class, it would happen like that. I don't get a second take in a live class. It's one time. You get it or you don't. And I think people understand I'm human and it sometimes happens. I will forget things. So anyway, I wanted to thank you guys for all your questions. I really appreciate your joining me here on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I also have a Pinterest page, so if you want some ideas for cooking, yoga, etc. and more, you can look for the Yoga Ranger on Pinterest as well. I also have a Spotify playlist, the Yoga Ranger on Spotify, for musical playlists to support your practice. Check all of those things out. You can link all to them through theyogaranger.com. And you can also join me as a member. So if you're not a member, join me as a member on theyogaranger.vhx.tv. And I hope to see you again very soon. Have a great week.